Oh boy, I'm sure this won't be a controversial video. I don't like Marvel Rivals. I know that's a pretty hot take considering how overwhelmingly successful the game has been since its release. I mean, Marvel Rivals has been in the top 3 titles on Steam for a month now, and it doesn't seem to be losing any steam. So, I want to preface this video by saying that Marvel Rivals is an extremely competently made game. There's a very good reason that this game has taken the world by storm, and it's because the devs have crafted a strong and vibrant hero shooter experience that millions of people have been craving since Overwatch was ruined. However, Marvel Rivals isn't a perfect game, and in this video I'm going to be critiquing things about the game that rub me the wrong way and make me not enjoy this game nearly as much as I'm sure much of my fanbase wishes that I would. So let's get started by talking about the elephant in the room, the statement on the thumbnail that's probably why you clicked on this video. Marvel Rivals is an Overwatch clone. In my opinion, this shouldn't be a controversial statement because Marvel Rivals' similarity to Overwatch is very much by design. The Marvel Rivals developers intentionally created a game that draws from the core design principles of Overwatch because they wanted to rival Overwatch in the category and iterate on those principles better than Overwatch 2 did. However, this has also led to the game falling for many of the design problems that Overwatch has that also turns me off of that game. Let's go over a few of these issues now. For starters, Marvel Rivals has a Bloated DMG Class just like Overwatch. Most people want to play damage heroes, and because there's no role queue, teams will often be extremely lopsided, in some cases having 5 damage heroes and just 1 support. However, if they add a role queue, then they'll end up going right down the same rabbit hole as Overwatch did, where team comps might feel stale and queue times might become drastically longer. Having such a bloated damage roster also means that if you're someone who enjoys tanks or supports, you have much fewer options to explore and you're less likely to find a hero that you enjoy. I'm the type of person who really enjoys tanks, but none of the limited roster of tank heroes really speaks to me in the same way that someone like Reinhardt from Overwatch or Mako from Paladins do. I, like many people, have been mostly playing damage heroes because that's simply where the majority of the character roster resides. Furthermore, the game has a very prominent sustain and time to kill problem. This game has 2 fundamental issues that are very difficult to balance in the game's current state, and those are the strength of healing and the strength of burst damage. Marvel Rivals inherited one of Overwatch's fundamental problems, which is that healing can make heroes take forever to kill unless you happen to be playing a bursty hero that can 1 or 2 shot extremely quickly. This leads to an experience where the TTK isn't stable, and you can either be an immortal god or get vaporized out of thin air. The reason why this is so difficult to balance is because both systems keep each other in check. If you remove all burst damage from the game, then healing will overwhelm everything. But if you make healing too weak, then why pick a healer at all? Just burst the enemies faster than they burst you. This is a big problem that I noticed back when I still played Overwatch. I arrived after Goats was put to bed, but that was obviously a very big problem because the sustain was simply too strong and nothing was dying. On the flip side, Hanzo and Widowmaker one-shotting me out of nowhere was an utterly miserable experience, and I know I was not alone in feeling that way. Marvel Rivals has the exact same issue. Luna Snow can make her team effectively immortal with her ultimate, and supports can generally outpace many sources of damage in this game, especially from tanks. Meanwhile, Hawkeye can one-shot headshot, and Black Widow gets close to it. If she gets a damage boost from a support, or the enemy happens to be missing a sliver of their HP, then she's absolutely one-shotting characters too. However, it doesn't have to be this way, and that's what's so frustrating to me. Paladins shows how a game can be balanced in a way where one-shot headshots don't exist, and sustain isn't overbearing because it introduces a game mechanic known as anti-healing. In that game, if you shoot an enemy, you temporarily reduce the healing they receive, and this healing reduction passively increases the longer the match goes on. This introduces extra depth to the game, because in order to get large amounts of healing, you need to effectively utilize cover and wait for the anti-healing effect to go away. Healing can still be very effective, but it's not overpowered, and it removes the need for one-shot headshots, allowing for a much more consistent and smooth TTK. Paladins also has out-of-combat healing, which takes some of the burden off of support players by allowing any champion in the game to start healing themselves if they spend enough time not being in combat. Marvel Rivals has health packs, sure, but it would really do well to incorporate out-of-combat healing too. Overwatch has already done this, and it's been highly successful, and I hope Marvel Rivals follows suit. I also find that Marvel Rivals has a very big problem with visual clutter. The game is saturated with abilities that cover your screen in a splatter of colors that makes it look like a Jackson Pollock painting, and it makes it very hard to tell what's going on sometimes. You can get overwatched in this game just like, well, Overwatch, and that's another pitfall that Marvel Rivals falls into because it's inspired so much by Overwatch. This is exacerbated further by the destructible maps. While it's an insanely cool gimmick, causing whole walls and buildings to crumble adds to the chaos and makes the game very difficult to track. And while the maps are beautiful, they're also extremely vibrant and saturated in a way that worsens the visual clarity during a team fight. Hero shooters can be fun and chaotic with a wide variety of abilities without sacrificing visual clarity. However, it feels as though in some cases, Marvel Rivals goes out of its way to muddy the battlefield with distracting effects. Can you find the magic player in this clip through all the abilities that Penny Parker put on point? It's surprisingly difficult, and I can't blame you if you missed her the first time. I'd enjoy the game much more if I didn't have to play Where's Waldo with the enemies during some fights. Another grievance I have with Marvel Rivals that it inherited from Overwatch is the long walk back from spawn after you die. One of the things I've always disliked about Overwatch is that if you die, you have to slowly walk back to the point, using your movement abilities in some cases to accelerate that process. If you're playing a character who has no movement ability, you're just out of luck, and you might possibly spend more time walking back to the fight than you spent merely respawning. Marvel Rivals didn't even attempt to fix this problem, even though there are plenty of creative solutions out there. In Paladins, there's a mount system which solves this problem. Each player rides in on a mount, which they can dismount from manually or will be forced to dismount from if they take damage. This adds strategic depth in the form of a zoning phase where you try to dismount the enemies after winning a team fight, but the real reason why I'm gobsmacked no other game has tried to incorporate a similar system is because mounts sell skins. You would think a greedy AAA studio like Blizzard or NetEase would want to squeeze money from their games as much as possible, so why not add a mount system? It would fix the long walk back from spawn, add strategic depth to their game, and allow them to sell a variety of cosmetics like unicorns, speeders, and flaming lions. One more thing that disappoints me about Marvel Rivals is the UI, or lack thereof. You see, one more thing that Marvel Rivals shares in common with Overwatch is its UI. It's very simplistic, showing you your health, ammo, and ability cooldowns. There's also a kill feed and the matches score up top. Now, let's take a look at Deadlock and Paladins. Do you notice what these games have that Overwatch and Marvel Rivals don't? A team UI. In Paladins, you can see every player in the game on the top of your screen. You can see which players are dead and how long it'll take them to respawn, and you can see the current health and ultimate charge of the players on your team. In Deadlock, it's the exact same. I have no idea why Marvel Rivals didn't incorporate a team UI into their game. I get that it's designed to be a casual game and they don't want the UI to be overwhelming, but having a team UI actually makes it easier to play the game because you can quickly glance at the top of your screen and know whether your team is dead, who needs healing, and whether you can combo ultimates together. It's such a basic feature that I take for granted when I play Paladins and Deadlock, and I miss it sorely when playing Marvel Rivals. On top of that, the in-game descriptions for characters are lacking. Just like in Overwatch, they give a basic description of what each ability does, but they failed to delve into specifics like the exact damage values, cooldowns, ranges, and other relevant information that can help you gain a better grasp on what the character does. To get any of those numbers, you're going to have to reference a wiki page outside of the game itself. Once again, Paladins and Deadlock do this part of the game right. Paladins has simple descriptions that you can reference at a glance in the match itself and on the landing page of the champion, but you can also click the Advanced Description button to get full detailed descriptions about every single aspect of each character's abilities. And if you hold tab, Deadlock gives you all kinds of information about your character, including their movement speed, armor, and lifesteal modifiers. Paladins and Deadlock also share another feature that's missing in Marvel Rivals, the Death Recap. Of course, Marvel Rivals has kill cams as a standard feature, which is great, but there's no option to read through every single source of damage that you took during a fight. Kill cams only show you a part of the picture, especially if someone stole a kill at the last moment. Deadlock and Paladins list out every single source of damage that you took leading up to your death, and it's a feature that I think should be standard in games like these. The last UI element that I'm sorely missing in Marvel Rivals is damage and healing numbers. I get that not everybody wants to see this information, but having the ability to toggle on and off these numbers would make the game experience so much better for me because it would elucidate exactly what's happening at any given moment. It would make it clearer who I hit and for how much, and would make hitting big wallops of damage or healing just that much more satisfying. Now, let's talk about one of the most egregious sins of Marvel Rivals, the prominence of auto-aim. I generally take a pretty hard stance against auto-aim in competitive shooters because it removes much of the competitive aspect. If I need to aim but my opponent doesn't, that's unfair. Auto-aim casualizes games in a way that's very unfun in my opinion, and that's why I'm so disappointed by just how much auto-aim is in this game. There are multiple heroes in Marvel Rivals with pure auto-aim weapons. Scarlet Witch is basically Moira from Overwatch if she was a pure damage hero, and it's utterly obnoxious. Her auto-aim is balanced by the fact that it's short range and doesn't do as much damage as someone like Hela, but it's still a toxic mechanic that I wish didn't exist. Cloak and Dagger also has the same mechanic on their primary fire. And don't even get me started on Star-Lord's ultimate. NetEase really looked at Soldier 76's ult and said, yeah, let's do that, but he can also fly! On top of that, there's also pseudo-auto-aim, or auto-aim with extra steps as I call it. Moon Knight can throw an Ankh on the ground and then just shoot at that instead of the enemies as long as they're close enough to it. It's by far the most balanced mechanic here though, so I won't rag on it too much. Hawkeye's ultimate, on the other hand, is disgusting. As if having a one-shot headshot wasn't enough, his ultimate also lets him aim at stationary targets instead of actually having to track the enemies. If you've been around this channel at all, you know how much I hate auto-aim. I've run an entire campaign to get Kasumi's auto-aim removed, and before that I was one of the biggest opponents of Leon's ruthless alacrity spam playstyle. So it shouldn't surprise you at all that I'm extremely disappointed by the fact that Marvel Rivals went out of their way to add auto-aim to their game instead of making other new player-friendly choices. For instance, they could add more fast-firing hit-scan weapons to the game like what Punisher has. Those are some of the easiest weapons out there. Or they could add projectiles with larger hitboxes like what Xin and Vora have in Paladins. A flamethrower would also be a great choice. A short-range weapon that does high damage and is easy to aim without necessarily being auto-aim is an excellent tool to have in any hero shooter. Another thing I want to talk about is how the game actually feels to play on a tactile level. That is, how it feels to navigate and interact with the character's kits and the environment. In my opinion, Marvel Rivals feels clunkier than its competitors to play for a few different reasons. One big thing that a lot of people cite when complaining about the game is the fact that Marvel Rivals is a third-person shooter. Instead of placing the camera at eye level and aiming with the character's weapon on screen like in a first-person shooter, the camera is placed behind the character and you aim by looking past the character towards the enemies. Certainly, this takes some getting used to, but I don't think that the third-person perspective is the only thing that makes the game feel off. I've played far too much Warframe to have a third-person shooter throw me off, and Deadlock feels absolutely phenomenal to play. Now, I don't think the third-person shooter point of view is the only strange thing going on here. Something that was much more noticeable to me as a problem is the fact that you can't jump on top of a lot of objects without using some kind of movement ability. Here, you see me playing as Loki and being unable to jump on top of many of these boxes that look like you should be able to jump on them. In some cases, it even looks as though the boxes were placed there with the specific intention that you should be able to jump on them to get to a higher platform. Different hero shooters solve this in different ways. In Overwatch, there simply aren't very many cases where this is a problem. The maps are designed in a way that feels natural to navigate, and I can't say I've ever run into an issue where I assumed I'd be able to jump somewhere but then wasn't able to. Deadlock's movement system is absolutely glorious, and I can praise it for many things, but one thing that it does well is the ability for every character to climb up onto a ledge if they're holding the jump key and are close enough to the surface of a ledge. This vaulting mechanic feels extremely natural and makes navigating the map so much smoother. I wish Marvel Rivals had something like this. However, if they don't want to add a proper vaulting system, they could just do what Paladins does. In Paladins, there's a crude form of vaulting up ledges known as wall jumping. Whenever a champion is standing right next to a wall and looking directly at it, they'll jump much higher. This lets characters jump onto boxes that they otherwise wouldn't be able to, and is a core part of navigating certain parts of their maps. I think Marvel Rivals would really benefit from a system like this to make their otherwise impressive maps much smoother to navigate. There is one more thing though that makes the game feel clunkier to me than Overwatch, Paladins, or other third-person games like Deadlock and Warframe. Many of the characters in this game feel slow or sticky in one way or another. There are many abilities that have some kind of animation lockout on them, whether it's the long mini cutscenes on some characters like Hela and Punisher, Thor's long wind-up on his less than impressive movement ability, or needing to navigate through confirmation sequences just to place down deployables like Groot or Loki. There are many things in this game that slow slow down the pace of gameplay in jarring or uncomfortable ways. There's also the awkward fact that many characters just don't move very fast. It feels like characters in this game don't move nearly as fast as they do in other hero shooters, and this is exacerbated by the third-person camera angle that zooms out from the character and thus makes them look like they're moving relatively slower. Flying around with Storm or Iron Man doesn't feel nearly as satisfying to me as zooming through the skies on Drogo's or Pharah, and nothing in this game compares to Deadlock or Warframe's movement system. There are certainly fast-paced characters, no doubt. One of my favorite characters is Black Panther, one of the fastest combo-based characters in the game. And we can't forget about characters like Spider-Man and Venom who can soar through the skies with their grappling hooks, although I will fully admit that I don't like how their grappling hooks work and I wish they were more like what Vora has in Paladins. But there's also enough clunk in the game that turns me away towards smoother titles like Overwatch or Paladins. There's also one thing that's very clear about Marvel Rivals when compared to Paladins and Deadlock in particular. The game lacks depth. This is another thing that I don't think is controversial to say because it's very much by design. Marvel Rivals is a game designed around having broad casual appeal. They're leveraging the Marvel IP to create a game where players can have fun role-playing as their favorite superheroes without needing to read a whole encyclopedia of abilities and mechanics. That's the root cause of some of the issues I mentioned earlier, like the prevalence of auto-aim and the simple UI and ability descriptions. Marvel Rivals has characters that can really only be played a handful of ways. There aren't really many unique ways to play Scarlet Witch, Rocket Raccoon, or Iron Man. You play the characters in Marvel Rivals the way the devs intend you to play them, and that's about it. This stands in stark contrast to the playstyle diversity that exists in a game like Paladins. In Paladins, I can play Buck in at least 3 majorly distinct ways thanks to his talents that all encourage drastically different playstyles, and I can modify his playstyles even further with cards that give him powerful effects like 50% increased lifesteal or movement speed. And in Deadlock, there's arguably an even greater degree of customization with its vast array of items that you can buy, some of which grant the player completely new abilities like a short-ranged blink or a literal magic carpet. There are all kinds of ways to customize each character to your liking, allowing for much more personal expression and replayability. Shoot, my favorite character Viscus can be played with a goo ball based build, a goo punch rollout based build, a gun based build that prioritizes burst combos, a cube based support build, or any combination of all these. It's this type of depth that I crave in a game, and it's lacking in Marvel Rivals. The last thing that turns me away from the game is ironically the same thing that draws a lot of people into the game, the Marvel IP. This is obviously extremely subjective, and most people won't agree with this point, but it is something I'd like to bring up nonetheless. I was never someone who was interested in superheroes growing up, and I don't really connect with anyone in the Marvel universe. Marvel's comics and movies have been around for decades, and that means Marvel Rivals isn't exactly bringing anything new to the table when it comes to the characters and their lore. I'm not suddenly interested in learning about Iron Man's lore just because I played him in Marvel Rivals. I've known about him my entire life and just haven't been interested. Other hero shooters with unique characters and lore can offer me something that Marvel Rivals can't, the chance to fall in love with a new character that I've never seen before. I took a gamble on Deadlock with its mysterious cast of fresh new characters and have ended up becoming enraptured by the game's lore and character interactions. Before that, it was Overwatch's unique roster of heroes, and before that, it was Paladin's special variety of champions. Like I said at the beginning of this section, the Marvel IP is also a strong suit that attracts a lot of players to the game. Marvel is one of the most popular IPs of all time, and if you love Marvel, then this game has a lot to offer you. But if you're in the minority of people who don't really care about Marvel's lore like me, then this game isn't as appealing and it won't do much to change how you feel about the IP. At the end of the day though, Marvel Rivals is a very well-made game. It wouldn't be as big of a success if that wasn't true. And while I've aired out my grievances with the game throughout this entire video, I'm not going to pretend like I completely hate the game. I'll almost certainly be sticking to other titles in the genre like Deadlock and Paladins, but there are definitely still some things I respect and appreciate about this game. The biggest thing I respect Marvel Rivals for is the amount of melee-based characters that they have. Overwatch and Paladins only ever added a handful of melee characters to their game, but Marvel Rivals has 8 fully dedicated melee heroes as of writing, with many other heroes that have melee aspects to their kit, such as Black Widow's batons. This type of unique character design is bold and refreshing, and I applaud Marvel Rivals for daring to go where no hero shooter has gone before with all these melee options. In my opinion, this is one of the biggest things that sets Marvel Rivals apart from other hero shooters that doesn't get talked about enough as it should. Another thing that I quite like about Marvel Rivals is the art style of the game. Now, I know I complained earlier about the visual clarity of the game, but that doesn't detract at all from the fact that the game is gorgeous. Marvel Rivals leans heavily into the art style of the comic books that all the superheroes are based on, bringing them to life in a super detailed video game world. Not only are the maps richly decorated, but the characters are also visually stunning for a variety of reasons. Simply put, they knocked it out of the park in this department, which is exactly what you want to see in a video game that's based all around role-playing as iconic superheroes. That's not the only reason why I appreciate the art style of the game, however. If you take a look at the broader hero shooter genre, you can see a lot of overlap in the art styles. Overwatch, Valorant, and Apex Legends all have a lot in common with their visuals. They all have plastic, cartoonish, semi-realistic characters set in matching vibrant worlds. Paladins is set in a much more different fantasy environment, but many of its characters also share the same plastic feel that Overwatch characters have. There are certainly some subtleties that distinguish each of these games and set them apart. I'm not saying they're copycats. Overwatch characters would look flagrantly out of place in Apex's gritty environments, no doubt. But take a look at all these characters placed next to anyone from Marvel Rivals. Yeah, there's a distinct and sharp difference that's immediately noticeable because of Marvel Rivals' unique art style. Marvel Rivals graphics offer something fresh in the hero shooter genre, and I'm extremely happy to see it. In a market where many games strive for photorealistic graphics or play it safe with sanitized cartoon characters, Marvel Rivals is a breath of fresh air. Now obviously, I wouldn't be able to make a list about the things I like in Marvel Rivals without talking about the team-up system. This is an original and fun system that makes your team composition much more important than in other games. There have certainly been natural hero synergies in games like Overwatch and Paladins going back years, such as the Rein-Zarya combo that I miss so much from Overwatch 1, or Torvald plus any flank. But there's never been synergies on the level of Marvel Rivals before. In Marvel Rivals, you can unlock entirely new abilities by combining certain characters on the same team. For example, if Rocket Raccoon or Jeff the Shark are on the same team as Groot, they can ride Groot like a mount and work together to destroy their enemies. Or if Black Panther or Psylocke are on the same team as Magic, they gain the ability to rewind back to a previous position like Tracer or Atlas. This is a very cool gimmick that injects extra depth into the game, and is by far one of the coolest and most unique aspects of the game. The last thing that I greatly appreciate about Marvel Rivals, possibly more than the team-up system, are all the dynamic maps that this game has. The maps in this game are living beings that move around and can be interacted with in a way that's never been seen before in a hero shooter. You can shoot and blow up just about anything on the map, which drastically increases the wow factor of the game and really makes certain abilities feel impactful. I still remember the first time I saw the bridge come crashing down onto the payload lane because it was such a cool thing that isn't even remotely possible in Overwatch. These destructible and dynamic environments also lead to a new understanding of how cover is supposed to work. You can hide behind walls, but that doesn't mean you'll always be safe. With enough pressure, the wall you're hiding behind can be destroyed, but that also means that you can create new vantage points by punching holes in walls which you can shoot through. There are also a few maps that move cover around in unique ways, so you'll always have to be on your toes because the map could change at any moment. This feature is super cool and very well implemented, and it's another one of those things that sets Marvel Rivals apart from Overwatch when the two games would otherwise be extremely similar. Marvel Rivals is an unprecedented success story that's drawn in millions of players and is putting serious pressure on Overwatch and other hero shooters to do better. It's a huge win for the hero shooter genre because it does a ton of things right and will hopefully encourage other studios to step up their game and make better products. There's a lot I can appreciate about the game, but it's not without its flaws. Marvel Rivals simply isn't the right game for me. Even though it brings some fresh mechanics, bold decisions, and an incredible art style to the table, it also runs into a lot of the same pitfalls that make me frustrated by Overwatch, and is lacking certain features that I had hoped would be standard in the hero shooter genre by now. I'm much more impressed by Deadlock, and if you want to see a video where I explain all the reasons why I'm fully addicted to that game now, please let me know in the comments section down below. If you're someone who loved Overwatch but fell out of love with the game for one reason or another, or you're someone who absolutely loves the Marvel IP and wants to roleplay as your favorite superheroes, you should absolutely give Marvel Rivals a try. I'm absolutely sure you'll have an incredible time. For me, however, I'm going to stick to other titles, and I hope that this video gives a thorough explanation as to why. I also hope that my criticism of Marvel Rivals was constructive and useful, and who knows, maybe if they address some of the issues I brought up in this video, I'll come on board as a huge Marvel Rivals fan. But anyways, that's gonna do it for this video about my many critiques of Marvel Rivals. If you liked this video and agree with what I've said, then make sure to drop a like on the video, or drop a dislike if you fervently disagree. Comment your thoughts down below and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this from me. And with all that being said, thank you guys for watching, I will see you all next time, peace out.